This morning is about hope, and it's about the hope that comes from communities, in this case Skagit County communities, pulling together to address important needs. And while it's important for the tone of this morning to be hopeful, I believe that there's benefit in stepping back and being clear about what the problems are we're trying to address. We live in the midst of one of the largest opportunity gaps in the history of the United States. Between 1979 and 2011, the gap between the top 1% of wage earners and the bottom 20% has increased well over 200%. According to the Washington State Budget and Policy Center, in Washington, income gains over that period of time for the top 1% of wage earners have exceeded 222%. While income gains for the remaining 99% of wage earners have been at 14%. Here's one thing we know. We know that stagnant wages and unemployment have a disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable citizens of our community. Those at the lower rungs of the socioeconomic ladder face a variety of mutually reinforcing barriers that make it exceedingly difficult for them to succeed. We all like to highlight stories of individual resilience, and I believe that's tremendously important. Yet it's also important to speak the truth. And the truth is that many of those stories, if not most of them, capture the exception rather than the rule. Because here's the rule. The rule is that most of our poorest and most vulnerable citizens simply lack the social, emotional, and economic resources to address their plight. It's a shameful fact that this country has the highest rate of childhood poverty of any developed nation in the world. Poor access to nutrition and health care and prolonged exposure for many to stressful living environments lead, all too often, to cognitive and social emotional delays that contribute significantly to poor educational outcomes. These outcomes lead, in turn, to unemployment and underemployment, which is so harmful to the economic vitality of our communities. It's a recursive pattern that's become all too common among the disadvantaged in our communities. So what does this look like for Skagit County? Well, according to the Census Bureau's annual American Community Survey, Skagit County's overall rate of poverty among children ages 5 to 17 exceeds the state average by 10% overall. That rate jumps to 25% for Concrete, 30% for Burlington, and 40% for Mount Vernon. So if these children are our future, how do we ensure that they have the opportunity to succeed regardless of the level of income their parents find themselves on on the socioeconomic ladder. We know that complex social problems require solutions that consider how all the individual parts of the problem interact to reinforce each other. Without this kind of systemic approach, our efforts are going to lack meaningful and lasting impacts. So I want to echo what Terry and others have said by saying that it's my firm belief that United Way's framework for community success, which includes the building blocks of health, income, and education, is just the kind of approach that's needed. Each element of United Way's, I'm calling it a three-legged stool. I'm not sure where that fourth leg comes from. Income, education, health. There's got to be a fourth one there, so I'm just messing. But it's each one of those legs is dependent on the other for success. Access to living wage jobs is compromised, as we know, when students do not graduate from high school or graduate lacking the skills needed for success in post-secondary education and careers. Yet the lack of living wage employment opportunities for parents leads to social conditions that compromise students' abilities to learn. Similarly, personal health is both a cause and effect of educational attainment and personal income. For many years in Skagit County, literally dozens of community groups and agencies, many of whom are represented here this morning, have worked tirelessly to create stability for our citizens most in need and to address the root causes underlying poverty. There is absolutely no question that these groups and individuals have made and continue to make tremendous differences in the lives of many. At the same time, though, we know that a coordinated community-wide approach to these efforts is our best hope for powerful, lasting change in our Skagit County communities. The outcomes possible through these kinds of efforts far exceed the additive outcomes of individual group efforts. In Skagit County, we pride ourselves, and rightly so, in our long history of cross-agency collaboration and cooperation. But despite our well-earned reputation, we lack agreement around a community-wide vision for prosperity. Getting to this vision and shared action strategies is, as we know, tricky. And it requires skill, it requires perseverance, and it requires patience. Thankfully, United Way is transforming itself to take on this challenge. As a trusted advocate and respected community convener, they have the mission and the resources to bring the community together to facilitate conversations that will lead to a community-wide approach to address the barriers to prosperity for each and every one of our citizens. I urge you this morning to join with me in supporting their efforts, and I thank you again for your time.